Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Got a great program in store for you today. A little bit later in this edition, our South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez is going to be leading a conversation with Lake and Jordahl with the Center for Biological Diversity about the plans for border wall or border security now going in the Big Bend region, Big Bend National Park, Big Bend Ranch State Park out in West Texas. So we'll hear from him and them in just a little bit. But first, as always, we're going to start today's edition by taking a look at what's trending across the border, starting with more federal immigration officers are making their way to airports across the country. President Donald Trump deployed the agents to supplement the Transportation Security Administration during a government shutdown that has caused long lines at security checkpoints across the country. Federal officers are a routine presence at international airports where Customs and Border Protection officers screen arriving travelers and Homeland Security investigations agents handle criminal cases tied to smuggling, trafficking, and fraud. But what's unusual in the current moment is their visibility at TSA security checkpoints.
So ICE has done very well. I've requested. Now, I'm a big believer that they should be able to wear masks when they go and hunt down, murderers, criminals, and others. But for purposes of the airport, I've requested that they take off the mask. I don't like it for the airport, and I believe they are willing to do that.
Why do they wear masks not at the airport, but they need to do it when they're out in the country?
Because the people coming into the airport, typically speaking, aren't murderers, killers, drug dealers, etc. There may be a few of them, but there aren't many. They're people that want to come into the country or that people want to leave the country, go into maybe their home country. So I didn't think it was an appropriate look for an airport.
Hundreds of thousands of Homeland Security workers, including from the TSA, U.S. Secret Service, and Coast Guard, have worked without pay since Congress failed to renew DHS funding last month. Restaurant owners say that immigration raids over the last year across the country has had a significant impact on their businesses. Staffing shortages and declining sales are among the biggest issues to them. As Madison Meyer explains from Austin, Texas, a new initiative calls for immigrant work permits for restaurant employees.
The people who are getting detained and deported are people who work at all of your favorite restaurants.
For local restaurant owner Adam Orman, he says recent immigration enforcement in the United States has had a direct impact on his business.
We've had at least 7 employees have some interaction with ICE, detained, deported, family members detained or deported.
Being in the U.S. without legal status is a civil violation, and ICE is tasked with enforcing those laws. That's why Orman is supporting a new national campaign called Keep Food on the Table. The initiative, backed by the Texas Restaurant Association, is calling on Congress to create work permits for long-term undocumented immigrant workers.
So not citizenship, not even necessarily permanent residency, but just legal work permits for long-time, undocumented, but law-abiding folks who have been here in this country.
The group says that recent immigration enforcement has contributed to staffing shortages and higher menu prices. They also report about 66% of restaurant operators in Texas have seen negative impacts in recent months.
The biggest impact we're actually seeing, it's over 40%, are reporting a decline in sales and traffic in our restaurant.
For owners like Orman, the effects are personal and immediate.
When someone just doesn't show up for work, and then you have to figure out what happened and figure out where they were detained or were they deported.
Under federal law, employers are required to verify the identity and work eligibility of all new hires, regardless of whether they are U.S. citizens or non-citizens. For Orman, he hopes the new campaign leads to change.
But it is a good start, and I think we need our employees to know that it is safe for them to leave the house, it's safe for them to go to work.
Madison Myers, KXAN News.
The National Restaurant Association says about 20% of the restaurant workforce is made up of immigrants. In other news, the uproar over a proposed border wall through Big Bend National Park continues, with environmentalists, tourists, and local officials adamant that the wall is not needed through the winding cliffs in Rio Grande. Now, there are 2 big parks at Big Bend, the National Park and the Big Bend Ranch State Park. The local newspaper there, the Big Bend Sentinel, is reporting today that the state will not have a physical steel bollard wall. The newspaper says the local Border Patrol chief, Lloyd Easterling, shared the news with Presidio County Commissioner Deirdre Heisler on Sunday. A physical wall is still expected to go to Redford, Presidio, Ruidosa, Candelaria, and on Fort Quitman. But what about through the national park? Well, joining us here to talk more about that today are South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez and Lakin Jordahl with the Center for Biological Diversity. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for coming on, Lakin. Boy, from Ruidoso on, that's some beautiful country out there. Let's jump right into it. I think there's 110 miles of border wall that was originally planned for Big Bend National Park and Big Bend Ranch State Park. Now, your title there at the Center for Biological Diversity is National Public Lands Advocate. So what's happening to these lands? What's the latest you can tell us?
Well, the latest we know is that Border Patrol has charted out a course for a border wall through the national park. They recently changed the color of some lines on a map on their website, but they have not made any sort of commitment not to build walls in the national park. They have awarded a construction contract to build walls in portions of the state park. And this would completely cut off public access to the Rio Grande, which is how people recreate. It's how many people make their livings, especially in rural South Texas. And it would also cut off wildlife from their only dependable source of drinking water, which is, of course, the river.
And what kind of wildlife live out there, and what do people do? Talk to us more about this topography, trail hiking, whitewater rafting. Tell us about that area.
Yeah, it is one of the most stunning places in the world. I was lucky enough to work at the national park in 2015. It completely changed my life. It opened my eyes to the beauty of these desert landscapes. We've got black bear who come down to the river to drink, bighorn sheep, mountain lions, incredible diversity of plant life, birds that aren't found anywhere else in the United States. So this area is a hotspot for tourism, brings in tens of millions of dollars every year. And it's also the single quietest part of the entire U.S.-Mexico border when it comes to border crossings. The idea of building a physical wall in some of these places that your viewers are looking at right now, I mean, why on earth would we spend billions of dollars to build a steel wall under 100, 200, 1,000 foot high cliff? Some of these areas in the original map that DHS put out showed that they would be doing exactly that. And while the map color has changed, these places are still very much under threat.
And some of this video, actually, I shot it from 2019. We did a border tour through, starting in San Diego. We ended up all the way here in Brownsville. And that segment, I was lucky enough to be allowed to whitewater raft from Terlingua down through the park. And so, yeah, those cliffs are 1,500 feet. That was water again in 2019, I think a little bit higher than it is now. We've been having a lot of drought and extreme heat. You mentioned the number of people crossing. They just released, CBP just released the numbers Friday for sectors, and you're right. The Big Bend sector had the second least amount of encounters of the 9 sectors on the southwest border in February. Yuma had the least with 139, and so I think there was 150 in the Big Bend sector. We had more children cross, unaccompanied children cross here in the Rio Grande. We had 1,300 total than they even had the entire sector. But DHS is saying this is important for border security. You're saying there's just not people crossing.
Just to convey the sense of scale, the Big Bend border sector is 517 miles long. It is more than 1/4 of the entire U.S.-Mexico border, speaking on a geography scale. And they've had 150 crossings in the last month. Almost all those crossings are happening in more urban areas. There are other cities, more accessible places where some of these crossings are occurring. Virtually none of them are happening in the national and state parks. And just so your viewers understand, south of these parks are massive protected areas in Mexico. There are no roads, there are no highways, there are no infrastructure at all. So for someone to cross through the national park, they would first have to backpack for many days through some of the most rugged terrain in the state of Chihuahua. Then they would have to rappel off these cliffs and walk another 4 or 5 days on the U.S. side before they would have to go through an internal CBP checkpoint. Every road leading in and out of this place meets up with the Border Patrol checkpoint. So the fact that, all of the Republican sheriffs are opposed to this thing, the fact that regardless of political affiliation, every single local resident is speaking out against wall construction here, I think the federal government ought to listen to the people who know the border best and stop this project, completely stop this project, and commit to never building walls through this national park and state park.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point. I had never been south of the border at that location. So you're saying, I know what it's like to get from Terlingua several hours north. Even just to get Wi-Fi, you have to travel several hours. But it never occurred to me that on the southern side, there's no roads, you're saying. And so you have been to that area. I mean, it's just very desolate. I mean, a coyote would literally have to drop someone off and have them walk for days. Is that what you're saying?
Have them walk for days, rappel from cliffs, route find in places that have no water, no services. There's one tiny little village on the Mexican side of the river that you probably canoed by called Boquillas.
Yeah.
This road, it takes 5 or 6 hours to get to pavement from that road of rugged 4-wheel drive roads. So there's no smuggling here because it doesn't make any sense. There are so many other places that it's easier to cut through the wall or climb over it in urban areas. It would just be such a travesty to wall off this place when nobody's crossing here.
We're speaking with Lakin Jordahl of the Center for Biological Diversity about the federal government's plans to put some border wall through Big Bend National Park and the surrounding parks there in that area. But we're going to continue the conversation after a quick break, so stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Getting back now to that conversation with Lakin Jordahl of the Center for Biological Diversity.
Hey, Lakin, you mentioned earlier about the sheriffs. 5 sheriffs actually pushed back against the border wall. And these are from Presidio, Brewster, Hudspeth, Terrell, and Culberson counties out there. And they believe that it's for the cost, it's not benefit to border security. That's kind of a surprising statement there coming from law enforcement.
Yeah, and interestingly, I mean, these are not soft on crime or soft on border issues sheriffs. Some of these sheriffs are Border Patrol veterans. They are, very much deeply rooted in the MAGA ideology of we want to catch and deport every single person we can. And yet, here they're saying that the wall is not necessary. One of the sheriffs, I think he says it best. It's God's already made a wall here. How on earth do we think that another puny 30-foot high barrier would stop someone who has already crossed through this rugged, remote terrain for many, many days on end?
Well, and I wanted to go back to some of the maps that we mentioned earlier. So we're talking about Big Bend National Park and Big Bend Ranch State Park. So these are the maps, latest maps. This is from today on the CBP's website. Apparently, under the orange means that they are going to not put border wall. This is a faraway shot. Now, if we go to a little closer shot, you can see the area near Rio Grande. Walk us through here, Lakin. I mean, are they getting steel bollards or not?
We have no idea. These maps are not official documents. They may be on the website, but they can change these with one click. They can change these without congressional approval. They can change these without notifying the public, as they've done many times already. So until we can ensure through Congress that the federal monies aren't allowed to be used for any wall construction in the state park and the national park, these places are very much still in the crosshair. Now, I'll also say, even if they deploy what they're calling detection technology in the national park, that could have devastating impacts on both people's recreation and their livelihoods and on wildlife.
Do we know what that would be? They're talking sensor technology. Do we know what kind?
We have no idea. They've been completely, So they haven't talked anything about it.
And
It could mean drones and docking stations. It could mean stadium lighting. It could mean roads. It could mean more sensors. How many people are going to want to go on a river trip and sleep under surveillance towers and buzzing drones in this remote, beautiful stretch of river?
And DHS did on February 17th, they waived 28 environmental and cultural resource protection laws in order to fast track construction, saying that it was quote, an area of high illegal entry, which we talked about earlier. According to February numbers, it's not. But what it is an area of is it brings in a lot of tourism, like $65 million towards the regional economy from people coming into that area, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is a lot of money in this region. Brewster County, there's no oil there. There's no natural gas there. These people have their tourism dollars. And if that tourism money takes a hit, if people stop coming to visit Big Bend, that means so many of these family businesses will be gone. I've worked with a number of different folks down there, outfitters who tell me if this wall goes up, even if tourism just dips a bit, they will be put out of business because margins are already so small in those industries.
Now, your organization, along with 131 others, on March the 12th, sent a letter to several congressional lawmakers, including Congressman Henry Cuellar. He's a Democrat here from South Texas. And it said, urging them to put protections to prevent the wall from being built through Big Bend, writing, quote, building a border wall through one of the nation's crown jewel national parks in Texas's largest state park would be wholly unprecedented, and the resulting damage to public recreation, wildlife, rural economies, cultural resources, and the integrity of our natural heritage would be irreversible. So do you think that pushback has kind of caused them to maybe retract and change some of these maps? And are you hopeful that maybe they're not going to put steel bollards up, or are you still very concerned?
We're extraordinarily concerned. Absent intervention from Congress, absent them doing what we request in that letter, along with 130 other organizations, they could change the map at any second. They've already mapped out the course for the wall in the park. They've had their engineers go along and select the exact route that they would like to build a wall. They've gotten through the advanced planning phases of this already, so they can change course in a second. And we need Congress to pass appropriations legislation that says no federal funds can be used to build walls in the state park and in the national park.
Now, the money for this barrier is part of the big, beautiful bill, however, and it came with no environmental safeguards, as we found out here in South Texas. La Lomita Chapel, Eli Jackson Cemetery, Santa Ana National Wildlife, all potentially could get a wall. They had previously been protected. So why do you think Big Bend would be protected? What would it take in order to protect that area?
It'd actually be really simple. All it would take is one line of legislative text in a bill that says no federal funds may be used for border wall construction, physical border wall construction in the state park and the national park. That's all it would take. And there's so much bipartisan consensus around sparing this place from destruction that I think even some of the Republican senators can get on board with this, because if they don't, they are greenlighting the destruction of one of the crown jewels of our national park system. And really, Big Bend is just such a special place. Every Texan has so much pride in this incredible landscape. It is the premier place for Texans to go experience public lands, the state that doesn't have a lot of public lands. So if they want to move forward with actually building these walls, or even just building surveillance towers and lighting and fences, I don't think that that's something that Texans will support.
You say that with such conviction, and you're actually in Arizona, and if I recall correctly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I spent a lot of time in West Texas, and having worked at the park out there, it's a very unique culture.
Now, they've already issued $3 billion in contracts for Big Bend, the CBP, including a $1.2 billion contract to Fisher Sand and Gravel. They're the ones that built the private wall here in Mission, Texas. That's for a vertical border barrier system through Rio Grande, through the state park, and that's at about $17 million per mile if they build that, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's the kind of investment that these rural counties have frankly never seen from the federal government. I mean, these are counties that are struggling to keep their hospitals open, their schools open, their teachers paid, and I think it's extremely offensive to see the government come in and pump all this money into a problem that doesn't actually exist on paper, and all of this just goes to enrich these politically connected contractors.
We've been speaking with Lakin Jordahl from the Center for Biological Diversity about the federal government's plans to put up border wall and also smart border wall technology through the Big Bend area in West Texas. Unfortunately, we are out of time today, but we appreciate you joining us today, Lakin.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Lakin.
All right, stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Hydrogen gas, or hydrogen sulfide rather, also known as sewer gas, is circulating in the Tijuana River Valley in Southern California. It's a compound created by the high levels of sewage coming in from south of the border via the Tijuana River. As our Salvador Rivera reports, residents living along the river are tired of the sitting.
The County of San Diego has set up several stations along the Tijuana River Valley to monitor the air quality, including one here at Berry Elementary, where lately the numbers have been incredibly high. This man decided to ride his bike along Saturn Boulevard in the Tijuana River Valley, where residents continue to put up with the stench brought on by raw sewage from Mexico.
Year-round, that river never stops of pure raw sewage.
David Egger lives just north of the Tijuana River Valley. His property is dissected by the river itself and the smell generated by the sewage.
It is unbearable at night.
Egger, like others, is tired of the stink and politicians allowing it to happen.
It is disrespectful to the community, to this country, what has been allowed to happen here.
The smell is bad enough, but researchers have found dangerous gases coming from the river, especially hydrogen sulfide, which can cause respiratory illnesses and other health problems. Some refer to it as sewer gas. But whatever you call it, there is plenty of it in the Tijuana River Valley. In the past few days, monitors, especially the ones set up at Berry Elementary, have shown spikes well above what's considered healthy. With readings this high, the county recommends people limit their outdoor activity and suggests school children be kept indoors, something that is obviously not happening at Berry or other schools nearby.
All of the kids here in this part of town are having to deal with it. All of the community members, have to deal with it.
Gabriel Uribe is another resident who says he, his neighbors, and even his animals are slowly being poisoned.
Nobody's advocating for this anymore. They're slowly killing us, pushing us out of our community. A lot of people are moving. I don't want to move out of my ranch. I don't think it's fair.
Salvador Rivera, Border Report.
And before we go, wanted to remind you that from immigration to trade, security to culture, Border Report Live dives deep into the issues impacting life along the U.S.-Mexico border. And now you can join us for expert interviews, on-the-ground reporting, and the latest developments you won't hear anywhere else while you're on your commute home. Maybe you're walking the dog or you're at the gym getting a workout in, because Border Report Live is now available on the podcast apps that you see there at the bottom of your screen. So make sure to like, subscribe to a Border Report Live on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or the video and audio version on YouTube. That is going to do it for us today. Thank you so much to Lakin Jordahl of the Center for Biological Diversity for joining us today to talk about the Big Bend border wall, and as well as to our South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez for joining us as always. My name is Rudy Mireles here in Harlingen, Texas. We'll see you next time.